Hello. Thank you for joining us today for a discussion on managing email. Let's begin with a brief introduction. My name is Chris Recksteiner and I'm the head of marketing for SweepSheet. Many of you will recognize that name as Christy, my wife, is the owner and publisher for SweepSheet. SweepSheet is a woman-founded company. It was one of the first sweepstakes resources around. Today, the company remains committed to sweepers and is still woman-owned. How first were we? We've been around for 32 years now. This makes SweepSheet the longest running sweepstakes website on the planet. It's an honor we're very proud of. Now, this is good and it's less good. It's good because we've seen just about everything there is to see, and we have the data and the conversation corner threads to prove it. It's less good because over the years, sweepstakes have changed dramatically, and so have the capabilities of the web. Today, SweepSheets has a clear and direct mission: to deliver our members the premier place to quickly and easily find and manage the best sweepstakes possible, to provide simple and straightforward features that evolve with the changes in the sweepstakes community and the changes taking place on the web, to develop instructional videos that educate and inform to help you be the best and most successful sweeper possible. Finally, to provide our members with a great community of sweepers to share advice, experiences, and develop friendships, many of which have lasted for decades. We know this is a lot to take on, and we're here for this challenge. Thank you for being on this journey with us. Okay, that's enough about SweepSheet. Let's get into the topic of this discussion: email. Let's start with spam. Email spam, also known as junk email, refers to unsolicited email messages, usually sent in bulk to a large list of recipients. Typically, spam is sent for commercial purposes. Now, I've highlighted these words because they're very important to remember. They're unsolicited email messages, they're sent in bulk, and they're typically sent for commercial purposes. Spam is something everybody deals with. Well, how big of an issue is it? Let's take an example. The average person today receives roughly 100 to 120 emails a day, including spam, and that number is growing. Now, if that number seems low, it is, but remember, it's skewed from people who receive thousands of email messages and those who receive just a few. So on average, across all people using email, it's about 100 to 120 messages a day. 83% of those messages are spam. They are unsolicited email messages sent in bulk for a commercial purpose. Now, why do we highlight this? Why is it important to understand what spam is? Well, let's look at a few numbers around email. First of all, 15.2% of people who receive email offers convert, meaning they pursue the offer that they receive in their email. Now, this is important because it's the fastest and cheapest way to reach a lot of people, and that's not likely to change anytime soon. It's why brands, why anyone selling anything, why anyone trying to communicate anything uses email. It is incredibly efficient and effective. Now, let's look at a slightly different angle or a different side of this. Today, email accounts for roughly 19.8% of e-commerce transactions. Almost 20% of e-commerce transactions originate from email campaigns. That's billions of dollars of e-commerce transactions, and almost 20% of them are driven by email. Now, this is significant because Google, the small search company, you might have heard of them, drives only 0.1% more of e-commerce transactions. Now, you know how big Google is, right? They're enormous. It's one of the biggest and most powerful companies on the planet. Well, email is only 0.1% behind all of the money that companies invest in Google ads to drive e-commerce revenue. The key point here, email is absolutely critical. It is a critical success factor for e-commerce, for commerce in general. It continues to deliver big numbers, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So email is going to continue to be relied on. It's going to become noisier. It's going to become even more complicated than it is today. However, what we're going to walk through today are some tips to help you manage this as the flow of email continues. Now, why does this matter? Why is email so important? The last piece of this is something that people don't really think about, and I really want to highlight, and that's that no one wants a phone call. In fact, people so don't want phone calls that landlines are really becoming museum artifacts or decorative pieces in people's homes. Why are people getting rid of them? Because they're ringing all the time with people trying to sell you something. It could be a bridge somewhere you've never heard of in Oklahoma or insurance you don't need. It doesn't matter how many do not call lists you're on, that phone is going to ring. Email works because it's clean, clear, and to the point. It's cheap, and it isn't a phone call. Your phone isn't ringing. And because of this, you have to be extremely diligent in managing your email, especially with the increase in ransomware and identity thefts that are going on around the world today. With email being so important to you and to the brands that sell, being smart is of the utmost importance today, more so than ever. Now, let's look at best practices as they relate to setting up your email. These best practices will help you make sure you have a solid foundation for your sweepstaking efforts. Now, some of these are going to seem very basic and very simple. You're going to be very familiar with them. But it's important to go back to the basics and build that foundation as we go through the importance of these different capabilities. First, multiple emails. Have a special email for your sweeps and for contests. Don't include sweeps or contests in the email address, as it may be removed from consideration by the sweepstakes sponsor and or judging agencies. Really important. Do not include sweeps, contests, wins, winner, whatever in the address. Now, at the recent National Sweepstakes Convention, I asked how many people have 1, 2, 3, 4, or more dedicated email addresses specifically for sweepstakes. About 90% of the attendees had a dedicated email for sweeps. 30%, roughly 30%, had 2 or more. Well, why is this? It's because having a specific email or emails for sweepstakes is a best practice. Don't sleep on this. You might not need 4 of them. Not that there's anything wrong with having 4 of them, but you might not need 4 of them. But you definitely want at least 1. This will help you keep everything organized, especially if you use Google for your mail, Gmail, because their filters and auto sorting are probably the best available in and of all of the free email services. And we're going to show and talk a little bit about that in the session. The second is don't be cute. Don't include sweeps or contests, as we mentioned, but also just don't be cute. And this is somewhat self-explanatory. Sweepstakes are a give and take proposition. You're giving something with your entry, your contact information, and permission to contact you. And the brands are giving you something in return. Prizes. Both parties win. The reality here is that if your sweepstakes email address is, Lucky Bunny 101 or something of that nature, that's of little to no value to the brands. It's of little to no value to marketing agencies. They're not going to see that kindly. And in fact, it's increasingly likely they're going to not include it as part of the sweepstake itself, because the value they are creating in the sweepstake is the creation of the email list, the creation of people interested in a product or service. The value of that list is incredible. It's worth millions and millions of dollars to brands to have a large, engaged list of customers and prospective customers that are familiar with or are fans of or are engaging with or using a particular product or service. This is really important, and I can't stress this enough. The value of the lists that those brands are creating has never been higher, and it is increasing on a daily basis. By focusing on that fact, and by including or not including something cute, you're going to put yourself in the best position to remain part of all of those sweepstakes, to remain part of the sort of opt-in aspect of those sweepstakes rather than being excluded because the address you present is clearly of no value to the brand or to the sweepstakes agency or marketing agency that is putting it on. Third, and this is something that's becoming net new, are spam services. Don't register for a third-party spam service. And some of them will say, well, we do this and you just send your email to us and we scrub it for spam and we give you back only emails that are from people you know and you can trust. The reality is that those services are now intercepting email. They, in effect, look like the recipient. The brands and anyone executing sweepstakes sending these volumes of messages are not going to permit their messages to be delivered to these services. Why? They don't want their messages filtered. They want to make sure that they get to you. So they are actively building lists, white lists of these services to essentially remove them so that if you do have a front-end spam filtering service, it's going to get taken out. You're not going to get those emails. They're simply not going to send it, or they're going to remove you from consideration. Now, the off-the-shelf or the commercially available free email services, when I say that, I'm talking about Gmail, Outlook.com, Yahoo, things of that nature, have outstanding spam management capabilities. Just use those. They're more than good enough, and they're going to keep you in the game as long as humanly possible. This is an important point. They're going to keep you in that game because the brands, those very people who are supporting the sweepstakes, are working hand in hand with those platforms, working with Google, working with Yahoo, because it's all about advertising. It's all about connection. It's all about understanding how people are using those platforms and how they're engaging with the information and the services that are provided. Those brands are going to always be working with Google and Yahoo and other free service providers to make sure that information, i.e. emails, can be delivered. They're great places to start. They're wonderful tools, and there is such a tremendous partnership between the service providers and the brands that they're where you want to be. Now, Comcast and others fit into that as well in terms of the free services. It's not specific just to Gmail and Yahoo, but you understand what I mean. That type of service provider, they're excellent. Don't put anything in front of it. Let them do their thing. It's the best possible place for you to be. Now, let's look at best practices specifically relating to sweepers. Now, these are the best practices and key points here that you may or may not want to share, but they're really good ways to think about using and managing email given what's happening today in the world. Number one, when you look and receive an email, the first thing you want to do is validate the sender of this email, or to ask yourself, who is this email from? Now, I pulled a couple examples from my inbox here I want to highlight, and this particular one came from Red Bull, looking to validate my email account as I use Red Bull TV. Now, when you look at this, what you want to first pay attention to is the from address. That from field right here, that no-reply@redbull.com, looks pretty good. But if I mouse over that, I can get even more information. I can see that it did come from Red Bull. I can see that it was mailed from an Amazon email address. I can see it was signed and authenticated by redbull.com. First of all, it's incredibly difficult to have a signed and approved or authorized, which is the signed by and the security variables, from Amazon if you're not a legitimate business, because they police these things very aggressively. So now that I have some sense here that this is actually a legitimate email, I want to take the next step. And I want to say, okay, if I'm confident that this hasn't been spoofed, that the from field here is actually legitimate, this email is from Red Bull, let's take a look at the message itself. And by that I mean, check the links. Where is any link or button in a message sending you? Now, same email, you're going to notice right here, there's a verify email button. And if you mouse over that or tap and hold that on your phone, mobile device, it's going to show you where it's going. And if you look down on the bottom of the screen here, there's another circle. It shows you the URL or the web address of where that link is going to take you. This is going to say that the verification of this email is going to go to redbull.com/registration verification. This tells you that it's going to a Red Bull property, meaning where this is sending me is from the actual sender. Now, once you're confident that this is a legitimate email, you can go ahead and you can click on this. You can also just copy the email and you can paste it into a net new browser. And when you paste it into a browser, see what the address is. See if it makes sense for you. Is it something you recognize, or when you see it pasted into the address field of your browser, do you realize it's directing you someplace else, someplace you don't want to be? Be patient. It takes a few extra seconds to be prudent here, but those seconds are going to save you tens or hundreds of hours of pain in undoing a phishing attack for your identity, and they're going to save you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in trying to resolve any issues that may arise. The third one, no reply with PII. PII is personally identifiable information, and you only want to send that type of information in an original email. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's take our Red Bull message. In this particular case, I hit reply to the message, and you'll see right now when I hit reply, it automatically populates the Red Bull address. Now, as we saw on the prior screen, that's going to be no-reply, so that I know this email is going to bounce. However, if in this instance they have requested some piece of information, I don't want to send that to them anyway. What I want to do is I want to delete that. And in that field, I want to manually type in any email address that I know this needs to go to. And what I mean by that is, don't just hit reply and start sending information. If you're suspect of something, find the address and send it to the most appropriate location. No one's going to ask you for incredibly personal information via an email. No brand is going to do that. No judging agency is going to do that. They're not going to say, email me your social security number. They're going to have legal documents associated by it. But if for some reason something looks like it really did fall through the cracks and they're sending you, perhaps it's urgent, like it's an emergency, they're trying to get a piece of information to complete a process, use this trick. And use this not just in sweepstakes, but use this anywhere you're sending any type of identifiable information. Make sure that when you hit that reply button, you are changing or verifying that field, and it is going to the appropriate party. Again, be patient. These are a few seconds of time and a little tiny bit of effort that are going to save you tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars and a tremendous amount of heartache just by being diligent. Now, let's look specifically at managing email as it relates to sweepstakes. Number one, don't live in your inbox or think and be outside the inbox. Set specific times to check your inboxes. Now, this is true for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all messaging platforms. Use specific times to review your messages on each of these platforms, and then see at that time if there are any messages that are requiring your attention. Why do you want to do this? If you are constantly living in your inbox, the likelihood that you are going to miss something is very high. You're going to see it. Your attention is going to be swayed by something else because you're doing multiple things. It is not a dedicated time to perform that action. You don't want to miss anything, so set that time aside. A watched inbox does not deliver wins. However, a watched inbox does deliver a tremendous amount of problems. And those are missing things because, again, your attention is divided. Step aside, step away, set those specific times, and use that time to focus, to really pay attention to what's in the inbox, what's going on, and what may or may not need your attention. The second thing you want to do is unsubscribe. Unsubscribe is your friend. Whenever you receive a newsletter, what have you, that makes it into your inbox that you don't want, unsubscribe to it. Most email clients will do this for you with just one click. I know Gmail does. It's awesome. You just click unsubscribe and they take care of it for you. Unsubscribing is a great way to keep your noise volume down in your email. Now, one question that comes up very often is, but the subscription to that newsletter was required for entry. We're going to talk about that later. I'm not talking about unsubscribing the minute something comes in. I'm saying don't hold subscriptions to email newsletters that you don't want or don't need. And we're going to come back to that. Finally, filters. Filters are your friend. In fact, filters are your best friend. If unsubscribe is your friend, filters are way beyond that. They're the best friend. They are the one you go to when you have questions, when you want to talk, when you want to share some information. These are really important. Now, again, at the National Sweepstakes Convention, I asked this question: how many people use filters? And a quick show of hands was less than about 20% of attendees use filters to help manage their email. And that's a really low number. And I hope that that's not the case for you. But if it is, we're going to walk through some tips and really some filter structure right now to help you turn this capability on and put it to work for you in managing your email and improving the effectiveness of your time spent doing email. Every platform has filters. Now, I'm hitting on this because these filters are going to save you time, and they're going to be something that you should absolutely set up in your chosen email client. Again, whatever email client you're using, they have filters. Now, Google has the best ones out there that I've used, but Yahoo, Outlook.com, Comcast, their filters are all awfully good too. I don't quite recommend anything beyond Gmail simply because of the way that Google works with advertisers. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and they're always doing the best things possible with advertisers to make sure that you're getting messages and communications that are valuable. Now, they might be valuable to the brand and you don't see it as valuable, but it means you're going to get that information much more likely than you are from any other platform. So it's something I lean towards, and it's something throughout this presentation and the examples that we'll highlight. So if a filter is really important, what should I filter for? First, you're going to want to filter for keywords. Now, the most common keywords we've identified in our research are listed on the screen here. And if you need these, take a screenshot. If not, push pause. You can write them down. But there are things like congratulations with a D instead of a T. Congrats, affidavit, or affidavit. Apparently, affidavit is a very popular guy in the sweepstakes community. I'm not quite sure who he is. We haven't met him yet. But for whatever reason, affidavit is an incredibly common misspelling of affidavit. Add that into your filter. Potential, grand prize, first prize, prize winner, instant winner, in winner. You are a winner. You won. You're a winner. Winner, won, win. There are many permutations on these terms, but this is more than enough to get you started. Certainly things like hours to reply are also important, or days to reply are important phrases to look at. Now, whenever you win a sweepstakes, note the email, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook message, whatever it is, email, doesn't matter. See what's new in that communication that maybe you don't have accounted for in your filter. In this list of your keywords, this list of the words you want to filter for, are then going to be applied into the filter of your email client. Now, again, I'm highlighting Google here because it's what I use, and I think it's the most powerful email application out there. The same way that you search in Google, you can search and create filters in Gmail. So you can string these terms together with and or operands. So here you can see hours to reply, or another winner will be chosen, or affidavit, or winner, or grand prize, and on down the line. You can add as many of these as you want. Now, why I like this is because you can set up one filter. You don't have to manage every keyword on its own individual filter. You can string these all together with the or operand and achieve this all. And then what you can do is when you create the filter, you can have it land wherever you want it to. You can assign it to any particular folder or any particular tag that you want in Gmail. And then you know that's your first point of focus when your time for managing email is here. Second, you're going to want to set up filters on the judging agencies. And this is a bit more tricky because you can't set up a domain name highlighting, let's say, @alliancesweeps.com, for instance, because it's extremely likely that they have mail services that are mail.alliancesweeps.com or some other subdomain. What you'll want to do here is set up your filters so that the sender's domain includes Alliance Sweeps, but does not include any of the sort of .com or .net addresses. Now you'll notice the words, the key terms here, all do not have a .com close. This is really important. Now, of all these on the screen, I'm going to show why in a minute. Please note that we maintain a list of these agencies on the SweepSheet.com website. In fact, if you go to SweepSheet.com/FAQ, you'll find it. We keep this up to date so you can check back regularly to see if we have everyone accounted for and you have everyone accounted for in your filters. If you don't, that's fine. No problem. Add the new one in. If you see one that we don't have, please let us know. We will add it to the list. And the same thing applies here as I just mentioned with respect to the winning terms. Whenever you win a sweepstakes, note the email, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook sender and message. See if that agency or firm is someone you don't have accounted for in your filter and add them. And again, let us know and we'll make sure they get added to the list as well. So what does this look like when you apply it? Very similar. Alliance Sweeps or American-Sweeps or Avid Inc. or. Again, you can string these together with that operand. You can change the way you're searching. You can change the time frame you're searching, but you can string these all together in a key way to make sure that you are looking for exactly what you want. What's really important here is when you run this search, you can save it as a search. You can save it as a filter. You can change the search window you're looking for. There's a tremendous amount of flexibility here to be able to find what you're looking for. And when you have these set up properly, the ability to run that search, perhaps ad hoc, you want to just go run it, or to run it within a particular day range or within, say, your spam folder. Right there, it says search all mail. You can select search just spam and run this through your spam filter. You can do that as well. There's lots of different ways to apply these filters to help you identify messages that might need your attention and not really have to worry about anything else. And the key there is that you don't have to worry about anything else. Just pay attention to what's being found. And you can do a quick look, perhaps through your spam filter, through your spam folder, and see if you missed something, because that's going to happen. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But this is really going to help highlight where your time and attention should be spent. Now, if we're highlighting the things you should filter for, what shouldn't you filter for? First, don't filter on brand names. It's extremely unlikely that a communications around a sweepstake will not include a brand name itself, but will instead include the manufacturer or some other party who licensed the right to use the brand within the sweepstakes. You're more likely to pull spam and other promotional messages into your focus area by adding product names or brand names. Second side of that coin I just mentioned, product names. Don't filter on product names. This is the same thing we just discussed regarding brands. It's not worth it. It's going to create too much noise in your environment. Finally, 4, search your spam folder. Unfortunately, filters aren't perfect. They aren't going to catch everything. They're going to catch a lot, but not everything. So how do you address the rest? Well, let's look at everybody's favorite email folder, the spam folder. Nobody likes it, but it's important to take a look at that at least once a day. Now, as I just discussed, you can run your filter against your spam folder. You can also, just once a day, take a look in there. See what's going on. See what's there. See if there's any messages that you missed that you might want to add new terms to, or you want to add that to your primary or your focused inbox, which will then prevent those messages from ever being in spam again. Now, if you're doing this daily, it's not too difficult to quickly scan those messages and delete anything that isn't relevant, or address anything that is relevant and manage it in a slightly different manner. Again, it's a little bit of time, but it's going to be very easy to do. If you're not sitting there staring at it, it's going to be simple. You're only talking about a couple dozen, handful dozen of messages each day. The filters are going to help manage through this, and you're going to build a practice or a process that you can very quickly get through spam. I highly recommend applying the filters there and running that search to start, and then saying, okay, here's the 5-6 things that really need my attention, and then just doing a quick scan of everything else to see if it's applicable or worth even your time or attention to look further. Finally, set alerts. Set calendars, task reminders for prize dates. This is really important because this is going to help you focus on what days and what times you need to pay attention to your email. Going back to that idea, live outside the inbox. By setting these alerts, you're going to know when you need to pay attention based on the sweeps you enter. Now, my trick for this, I don't enter a lot of sweeps. I enter them very specifically for particular prizes around cycling or trips, things that are of interest to me. But I create a task for each sweepstake that I enter in my task management app. I use Microsoft To Do because it's where my world exists, but you can do this in anything. Any task management app, a calendar, it doesn't matter. The native task apps on Apple and Android phones or tablets are plenty good enough. They're actually really awesome. And what I do is I enter a task for the day the sweepstakes winners are due to be announced on any sweepstakes that I enter. When that day arrives, I have a task right there to remind me to look for something from that sweepstakes, perhaps in the next 24 to 48 hours. If I don't see it, I close the task. Now, I spend most of my day in work apps, so this makes perfect sense for me. However, if you're a SweepSheet member, I highly recommend you use the My Sweeps list. Now, this is an incredibly powerful feature that is built into SweepSheet, where you can build lists on daily, weekly, and monthly sweeps, and then look at those each day as a guide for managing their email. You literally have the view of every single thing that you've entered that you want to pay attention to, and when it expires right on your screen. Once it expires, if you haven't seen a communication that you won, you simply click Remove the Expired Sweeps button, and the prize window is cleared, and you know you're not there, it's removed from your list. Now, this is very easy to do, and it's probably something I should do. I just don't spend as much time sweepstaking as I would want to, as much time as I do in my regular work environment, so I kind of cross the streams a little bit here. Now, this SweepSheet feature is so beloved and it's so powerful. It's something that we are really working hard to continue to evolve, and we're working on a completely separate overview and tutorial video on this right now. So stay tuned for that one. You'll see that coming very quickly. Finally, I want to make sure that if you have any questions, you reach out and let us know. We can be reached at customerservice@sweepsheet.com. Send a message to us. Put email management in the subject line, and we'll make sure that gets right to the top and gets answered. And anything that you're looking for, we will do our best to get you an answer, and we will continue to develop the tutorials and information and resources necessary to help you be as efficient and effective and win as much as possible. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. We appreciate your interest in SweepSheet.